Hi guys, just setting up the screen for the live. This time I'm going just a little socio-political, socioeconomic, come not really political, but socioeconomic basically, and then maybe touch on politics. Um, so today I actually want to commend our President Museveni of Uganda for having that vision that he's always had of going back to post-colonial times, like he restored the kingdoms of Baganda, Benyankole, when he came into power, or they came into power from the bush. Um, he actually was a historian. He studied history in Dar es Salaam when he was a refugee, and he really understands the socioeconomic aspects of African countries and especially Uganda. So, So looking at the broader picture, what Museveni said when he came to Kenya at the State House, when he had like a State House, a joint statement with President Ruto of Kenya, um, was something I didn't expect to come out of him, because I've been posting about the Luo migration in East Africa and Africa, and I knew that probably he'll probably watch that too. And Museveni has done a lot of bad things. He's hounded Kizza Besigye, never allowed democracy to thrive in Uganda. Bobby Wine has been hounded like an animal, although Bobby Wine technically won the elections. His votes were never counted, and I think his votes were mostly given to Museveni. So Museveni got an overwhelming 75% of the vote, which I don't think was true. But this time, when Museveni came to State House in Kenya, Museveni said one thing. In his speech, he actually focused on East African unity, the creation of East African Federation, or the Federal Republic of East Africa. And in my videos, I've shown a little bit about the migration of tribes, especially in the East African region. You find that the three major countries of East Africa, of course, there are more than three countries. There are about 5, 6, 7 countries in East Africa, tend to have the same tribal populations in the different countries. So, for example, the Luo actually live in Sudan, southern Sudan, actually, Ethiopia, Uganda, northern Uganda, and central Uganda, and actually Eastern Uganda, Western Uganda, and Western Congo. Eastern Congo. The Luos also live in Kenya. The Luos also live in Tanzania. So the Luos actually live in all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 countries in East Africa. So why have 7 countries populated by one group of people plus other groups? Somalis live in Ethiopia. They live in Ethiopia, in Somalia, they live in Djibouti, and they live in Kenya. So they live in all those countries. The Borana, or what you call the Oromo in Ethiopia, live in Ethiopia, and they live in Kenya too. In Kenya, they refer to as Borana. In Ethiopia, they refer to as Oromo. The Maasai actually live all the way from Turkana, all the way down to southern Kenya, into Tanzania, actually. So there's Maasai both in Kenya and in Tanzania. The Pokot, who live in Kenya, also live in Uganda, known as Karamojo. The Turkana also live in both Kenya and Uganda. So in Kenya, they are known as Turkana. Well, I think it should be in Sudan in Sudan or Southern Sudan or Uganda, probably there's a spillover with the Turkana. The Kuria also live in Kenya and Tanzania. So the fact that many of these tribes live across the countries, the colonial borders, in a way, don't make sense. And when Museveni was coming into power, actually Museveni said that it is time for Africa to dismantle these colonial borders that were created during the scramble for Africa and recreate the tribal nations or the tribal kingdoms. So in this case, we'll be having the Baganda Kingdom, the Banyankole kingdom, whatever, the Tutsi or Hutu kingdoms. Then we'll be having the Luo kingdom or the Luo Republic. We'll be having the Borana or Oromo. We'll be having the Somali and the Maasai. And then in Kenya, probably the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin, and then the Kamba. Then we have the Vijikenda kingdoms, and so on and so forth. So these are actually the real states, the real nations in the East African region. So what Museveni was coming from, actually I had Ruto listen to him keenly and just smile because Museveni was coming from very far. Before, as we look into East African Federation, like from the Federal Republic of East Africa, it's a political and military, more or less, organization. Like have a military merger, political merger, economic merger, and social merger of the East African countries to form one country, the Federal Republic of East Africa, or the East Africa, or the Federation of East Africa. Museveni was looking at it from probably a deeper perspective than probably Ruto was looking at it, because Ruto, his group is only in Kenya, the Kalenjin. They don't go beyond Kenya. Museveni has that problem that the Luos in Kenya also live in Uganda. They also live in Tanzania. They also live in Sudan, the Cholis, the Luos and the Cholis, or the Luo-speaking people live in Sudan, Uganda, and Kenya. So, and whatever happens to John Garang, one of the great leaders of Southern Sudan, nobody knows, but given that the population of Acholi in both Southern Sudan and Uganda is quite big, and they cover really a big area of northern Uganda and also Southern Sudan. The Dinka are only in Sudan. So there's always a fear, I guess, could be a fear that when these groups coalesce into one, like the Luo-speaking nations into one, they probably take over most of Sudan, Uganda, and part of Kenya and Tanzania. And probably, I don't know, but probably Dr. John Garang Mabior probably was looking far. Museveni, also being an academic, was actually seeing a lot in terms of dismantling the colonial borders and creating the tribal nations. And probably that's his main agenda, main focus, that the tribal nations should be recreated. And when the tribal nations are recreated, or the tribal kingdoms, since they might be small, like the Baganda kingdom is probably small, the Luo would probably be scattered because they're all scattered all over. They're not contingent, they're not like in one piece chunk of land. There'd be a problem still in terms of creating that. The Somalis are more contingent from Djibouti to Ogaden to northern Kenya. So that's one continuous piece of land. The Maasai also is also the same, all the way from southern part of Turkana, from Samburu, all the way up to the Serengeti. That's all Maasai land, including Nairobi. The problem will be with the smaller groups of people who are like probably smaller tribal nations, like probably the Kikuyu, the Kamba, the Kalenjin, and maybe another group. So I think Museveni went further as to look at it in a more global perspective. These are just my opinions, that forming a bigger federation is actually more beneficial than going back to form tribal nations. Tribal nations could be there like counties or districts, but then the bigger establishment, it would be more advisable to actually, and more wiser, actually, to form a bigger federation, the East African Federation. Forget about the East African community. That's been there since for the last 60, 50 years, and nothing has really changed. But what really needs to be done is to merge these countries into one country with one currency, one army, and also free movement of people, erase those borders, because the Maasai will move back and forth, the Luos will move back and forth, the Tesos will move back and forth, the Kurias will move back and forth, the Somalis will move back and forth, the different countries. So creating those artificial borders, having those artificial borders is the first thing to be eliminated. In other words, like have all the countries in East Africa merge into one federation. So we have, for example, South Sudan, maybe Ethiopia, Somali, Congo. Congo is a big country, the Congo, Rwanda and Burundi, which are like districts compared to Kenya, very small. So Rwanda and Burundi, Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, and probably even Mozambique, because all these countries actually united the language of one tribe, but actually it's a language can be spoken by people across all those countries. So that'll be a unifying factor in terms of language. The population would be a big economic factor. Free movement of people would allow people to move across the borders and trade. And of course, the bigger the population, the bigger the potential talents, and the bigger the population, the stronger the military. So in other words, that would be actually probably solve a problem of these small coups like Tutsis fighting Hutus, Rwanda trying to destabilize Congo. There'll be a bigger group of people involved, like everybody would be at the table. So small groups would not cause a problem. And just like it is in the US. So this is the only thing that I think Museveni has said ever since he's come to power, apart from recreating the tribal kingdoms. The tribal kingdoms was the best thing he did. The Baganda kingdom, restoring them, although not politically, but culturally. So that's my take on Museveni's latest endeavor when he came to Kenya. I didn't watch the other video where Museveni actually attacked Sudan for all more or less verbally, not physically. Verbally, like talked about Sudan not being an Arab country. Of course, it's true, Sudan is an Arab country. But just the fact that the people in northern Sudan are not like, the president, whoever it is, was claiming they're an Arab country. Definitely they're an African country. So I think that is, according to my opinion, that is the best thing that Museveni, any president in the East African region, has spoken of late. Leave alone the rhetorics of, East Africa, we are one, common currency, no visas. That's all hogwash, Just get rid of the borders and merge into one big country, like the Federal Republic of Germany, or like South Africa, more or less. And then you'll be more powerful, you'll have more say in the global community, and probably you'll be able to develop and send your people to the moon, like Museveni was saying. India sent people to the moon, China sent people to the moon. Here we are in East Africa getting China to build roads for us. We've not really actually developed technology in East Africa. So in a way, I think Museveni there in his later age seems to be more or less looking to finish what he really started, because his focus was actually recreating the tribal kingdoms and then merging those tribal kingdoms into one big country. He can do that in Uganda, but he can't do it in the other countries. So the best way it can be done is for all the East African countries to merge into one big federation, and then the tribal nations would actually create districts, more or less district or counties, with their own governance, with their own self-governance, and then there'll be one big government over all of them. And from my opinion, I think if that was to be done, what would be the capital of this East African Federation, of the Federal Republic of East Africa? My suggestion would be that it be like not like any of the capital cities of any of the existing towns in the different countries. Not Nairobi, not Arusha, not Dodoma, not Entebbe, not Kampala, none of that. It should be like a newly created capital that actually strides more than one country. And I would propose it be a border town between Kenya and Uganda, where the Maasais live in both countries. So it's like still one tribal area, but it's in two countries, like Namanga, like the border crossing of Namanga. Just create a town that straddles the two countries. And that area is really central. It's central in terms of the East African region, is away from the ocean, therefore the security is also flat, just like Nairobi. So you can actually create a town out of nothing and put a proper infrastructure, big, modern city for the East African Federation. So that's my take on Museveni's statements at State House Nairobi about creation of the Federal Republic of East Africa. It's time now in the 21st century. Coups in Congo, like today, there was a coup attempt in Congo. That should be a thing of the past. Like if Congo joined the East African Federation, becomes one big country with Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Somali, Ethiopia, and Sudan, no foreign power would come and try to meddle in Congo for the resources of Congo. You see, because the resources are now all widespread across the country. And then you have a bigger military, bigger population, more resources in terms of mines and maybe more innovations. So that's my take when it comes to Museveni's statement on the creation of the Federal Republic of East Africa, of the East Africa Federation. It's actually easy because right now we have the East African Parliament, and the East African Parliament would actually just be expanded into the Parliament of the East African, actually just the same name, East African Parliament, just increase the number of representatives like from each country. Instead of having like one or two, have like maybe 10 in each country or 20 in each country. And let's have a big legislative assembly of East Africa that's maybe 300 people or so, which can make decisions for like each community. Let's say like each tribal community should actually probably send like one person to that East African Legislative Assembly, so that each tribe is actually represented across the border, across all the countries. So we have a Tutsi, you have a Hutu, you have a Baganda, you have a Choli, you have a Teso, you have Kalenjin, you have Luo, you have Mijikenda, you have Kikuyu, you have Luya, you have Masa, you have everybody. So everybody should be represented in that legislative assembly, and that would make a more reasonable, actually, they actually pass more reasonable laws. And if we have like 2 people for each tribal group, 2 people, 2 representatives for each tribal nation, then we probably end up with around maybe 600 or 500 legislators. And then, of course, to pass a vote that will pass through the legislation, both the lower and the upper house would actually require a majority, and therefore it has to be a very rational decision. And this would actually create more democracy. At the local level, each state could have its own police force, its own number plates for the cars, its own regulations or rules for each country. But then the federal regulations would actually be applicable across board and override state legislation. Basically, that's political economy, that's social engineering, and that's what really changes nations. Like the Bolshevik Revolution, it didn't start actually in Russia. It started somewhere in the Croatian area, the Balkans. Academics were discussing all that. Karl Marx and Engels and all these academics were discussing all this, and then they took it from the academics to the ground, and that's the way the Bolshevik Revolution took place. So the masses joined, but the elite are the ones who got the ideas, brought the ideas, and the masses joined, and the revolution occurred. So in this case, I see Museveni as an elite in this aspect. Museveni is an elite in this aspect in terms of having studied history. There are professors in all these countries who can look at all this history more academically and broadly, and more rationally and come to a rational conclusion of how best to progress the East African nation, which is I call it the East African Federation, which is actually will be a new country soon, I guess. There's already East African passports. There's already an East African Legislative Assembly. Just increase the number of people. Just change come up with a constitution, the East African Constitution, and let it apply. And then in this case, you'll not have this problem of Al-Shabaab, whatever, because there'll be a big military that Al-Shabaab will be like, small group of people that can be cleared with the radicalism pretty fast. So that's my take on Museveni's statement on the formation of the East African Federation. Otherwise, with that also, we still have the bigger federation, but then still smaller tribal nations within the federation, which are ruled by governors. Yeah, more or less. So that the democracy is actually brought down to the people, and then the protection is much wider. The social protection is much wider for a much bigger group of people. And that's my take on Museveni's statement on the formation of the East African Federation or the Federal Republic of East Africa. I won't go with East African, right now it's East African Community. Before it goes to East African Federation, just jump to the Federal Republic of East Africa. And that's the big question. Each small tribe can have their counties and run them with their governors all over East Africa and give them leeway to have their own number plates, their own local rules. But then the federal rules should apply to all, and the federal protection also applies to all, basically in the East African Federal Region. That's my take, and I hope this video reaches Museveni, reaches the African leaders, Ruto especially, who was listening to that conversation. And having had a PhD, he probably has some knowledge of what is happening. Also, the South Africans, listen carefully, because when East African Federation or the Federal Republic of East Africa is formed, it will be a big power, just like South Africa is a big power right now. Especially if it includes Congo, all the minerals in Congo, all the minerals in Tanzania, all the minerals in Kenya, Somalia, Uganda, Sudan, all these come together. These are wealth, big wealth that this federation will actually have. So that's my take, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Today I'm wearing my imperial t-shirt from Costa Rica. Quechimba es Costa Rica. Well, yeah, Quechimba es Costa Rica. So these are imperial beer. This is the beer of Costa Rica, just like Tusker is the beer for Kenya. Yeah, or Pilsner. Pilsner is basically, I don't know, Pilsner is a British or German beer, I don't know. But Heineken is known to be German, Tusker is Kenyan, Pilsner, I don't know. So that's my take, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Listen to this if you're a social scientist, and if you're an economist, if you're leaning politically, listen to this and let it reverberate across East Africa, and let's come together into one country, the Federal Republic of East Africa. I would love to see this happening this year, not even next year. Ruto has removed all this, President Ruto of Kenya has removed all these visa restrictions. Let it be across the board. Let all these other countries remove visa restrictions. Let there be free movement of people across these countries. Let the borders disappear, and let's have just one country, the Federal Republic of East Africa. Then each county, each tribal group can still govern themselves, just like they've been doing ever since. And that's my take, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. Please like, share, and comment. What's your opinion? Just comment, and we can have a small discussion, and we see how far this goes. Hope you guys have a good day, great day. Okay, adios amigos, adios amigas. Hasta mañana. Hasta next time, not tomorrow. Until next time, guys. Ciao. And here, so I'll end the stream right now. Enjoy, and if not subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. I was thinking of starting a new channel just for discussion of like the way it is. So before I do that, I decided to use the Traveling Lion, my travel vlogging channel, for this discussion. But eventually, I think I'll move to open another channel just for these discussions and opinions, and people can exchange ideas about how to develop, especially African countries. I think they're the ones that really need uplifting right now. So if you have any take, shoot, I mean, put your comment down there, and we can have a discussion and see where this leads. Ciao, adios amigos for now, adios amigas.